Hey my fellow Atari Jaguar gamers, and welcome back to the Atari Jaguar review series. Today I am reviewing the very rare Atari Karts. Okay, Atari Karts is considered a Mario Kart clone, which is accurate, but in truth, how many games out there are clones of other games? Atari Karts starts with a character screen of one of the playable characters in the game, and each time you boot up the game you get a new character screen, which is pretty cool. Okay, you have a choice between 4 difficulty levels: Beginner, Warrior, Miracle, and Jaguar Ace. When you start the game, you have access to 7 characters: Regis, Scully, Clopito, Mistress, Bentley Bear, Bulky, and Patarmigan. But you can unlock 4 new characters by beating the Miracle Race track in each of the 4 difficulties, but I'll get into that more in a bit. The 4 unlockable characters are Atari, Pumpkin, Firebug, and Miracle Man. Okay, each character has their own stats, and the characters Bentley Bear, Pumpkin, Firebug, and Miracle Man are the most well-balanced characters in speed, acceleration, and steering. Before I move forward, I just have to say I really like the presentation on the select screen. Alright, after you select your character, you are taken to a select screen where you have a choice between 4 cups: Orgus Cup, Carlton Cup, Tempest Cup, and Miracle Race. Okay, you start a cup, and your objective is to beat each race, obviously, and you want to come in first place, which is a no-brainer, but you must be in one of the first 4 positions in order to move on to the next race. And unfortunately, you can't just keep retrying a race if you lose, because you only have so many lives, and then it's game over. But you can collect extra lives, but I'll go more into that later. Alright, I forgot to mention this, but you can select any of the 3 cups and beat them in any order, but there are 2 things. 1, each cup will get more and more challenging than the last, and you must get first place in the final score at the end of each cup, otherwise you'll need to do that cup over again until you do. Once you beat all 3 cups, you have access to the Miracle Race on that difficulty, and you will race against a new character, which is basically the boss in a new track, and you must beat him to the end. And once you do, you unlock the new character as well as a new track for the next difficulty. Okay, as you go on to the higher difficulty settings, the CPUs will get much harder, but thanks to the unlockable stronger characters, it will make it easier for you to win, at least until you reach the Jaguar Ace difficulty. Okay, I'm going to give you guys the straight answer. The first cup on the Jaguar Ace difficulty is a pain in the ass, but you can beat it. But the other 2 cups, I have to be honest, I don't think you can beat them. The computer AIs are just too damn strong, and if you make one mistake, it can cost you the race. I was finally able to get my hands on the Atari Jaguar Pro Controller, and even with that controller's ability to let me do faster turns, it hasn't given me much help in trying to beat those cups. On the Carlton Cup, I was having a really good playthrough one day, and I managed to beat 4 races and get first place, but then on the 5th race, I kept losing and went through every one of my lives, and needless to say, I was pretty mad. Now, you probably noticed, if I haven't beat those 2 cups, then how can I have the option of using the final unlockable character, Miracle Man? Well, I admit, I used a cheat code so I could play the final Miracle Race, and I was able to beat and unlock the final character, and from what I have seen using him, I might be able to beat those 2 cups eventually, but even if I manage to win, it will basically mean you can't fully beat this game without cheating, and that would suck. I hope I'm wrong, and I either prove myself wrong, or somebody manages to prove me wrong on this, I'm going to now talk about each track and some of the gameplay elements I haven't mentioned yet. All the tracks are on a flat terrain, but there is a common mistake that each track contains no jumps. But there's an option in the options menu where you can turn on a hilly mode, which will add jumps to each track, and while the animations are not very noticeable, they are there, and it's a cool feature to have. Alright, in each race, you face off against 6 enemies, which can cause problems for you, and there are also hazards in the road. There are items that will either help you out or cause you trouble. Some items will either help you get better controls or drive off the track onto other terrain without being slowed down, but there are other items that can be problematic for you, like a rabbit, which will instantly speed you up, which can be good under the right circumstances or cause you to crash under the wrong circumstances, and there's a green shell which will temporarily slow you down, which can either cause you problems or again can help you on certain tracks. The biggest hazard is this red double arrow, which basically reverses your controls and you must now drive the opposite direction. And while you will adapt to this fast, the problem is you get almost no warning when your controls switch back to normal and you end up crashing. The best way to avoid these hazards is to collect a helpful item and simply don't use it. You can run over any hazardous item and it can't affect you. Oh, there's one other object I forgot to mention. You will see only on certain tracks, hearts, which will give you extra lives. And the good news is, if you're forced to repeat that race, the heart will be in the same place. So on these particular courses, you could keep repeating a race on purpose if you need to get either a first place to win or a 4th place just to pass that course. There are also other useful objects and hazards on the road, like arrows which will give you a boost, and blocks which will give you a jump boost, and hazards like pools of oil which will spin you out of control, and try to avoid those like the plague. One disappointing thing is there is no weapons you can use against the enemy, which is disappointing. One thing to be aware of is the tracks do contain sharp turns, and you can spin out of control if you try turning too fast, so you'll have to figure out how fast to go when turning around sharp corners. Here's a helpful hint for you guys. On several tracks, there are shortcuts you can use to get yourself ahead, and they can be difficult to spot, but they can really save your butt. I need to take a second to talk about this track. This is called the Halloween World, and I have to say, this is my favorite track in the entire game. I love the wasteland look of the level. The horror backgrounds look excellent, and the tracks look awesome. Having tombstones, crushed pumpkins, and pools of blood in the road, and the horror music for this track is just outstanding, and I'm sure this same horror music was used in a later Mario Kart game, though I'm not sure which one. The track is just outstanding, and is easily my favorite track in the game. Before I move on, I am happy to report that there is a 2-player mode, which is pretty damn good. The frame rate remains high, and the graphics still look good, and in the 2-player mode, there is an offensive weapon where you can reverse your opponent's controls, and I just have to say, why don't we have that in the main game? Alright, now that I have given you what you need to know about the general gameplay, I'm now going to talk about the graphics. Okay, going straight into it. The graphics are surprisingly good. The tracks are fully textured, and the animation looks pretty nice. The graphics of each character are pretty good, and there's a cool effect with the tires when you either skid or drive over water or something else. You see kind of like splashback on the tires. The backgrounds are the real gem. I mean, they look amazing. Lots of color and animation, and are just so enjoyable to look at, and really show off the Jaguar's capabilities. The only graphical issue I have with Atari Karts is, while Atari Karts is definitely running at 60 frames per second, which is impressive, but the draw distance could have been a bit better. because you might not see a turn until the last second, and my friend commented on this, and I agree with him that the barriers for the tracks should have like an extra level of sprites so that the barriers are easier to see. Okay, a lot of you know the Jaguar has a major debate over if it's really 64-bit or not, and unfortunately there's no N64 games to compare a Jaguar game to, so I'm going to compare the graphics of Atari Karts to Super Mario Kart and Mario Kart 64 to see how Atari Karts graphics stack up against them, and the results might surprise you. Alright, comparing Atari Karts to Super Mario Kart, there is no competition. Atari Karts has way better graphics. Super Mario Kart's tracks have very limited texturing and limited colors, and while the character models are surprisingly good for a 16-bit game, but Atari Karts character models are way better graphically. Also, while Super Mario Kart might have a cool map screen in the bottom half of the screen, Super Mario Kart is only half screen because the game cannot run in full screen on the Super Nintendo, and even if it could have, graphically, it is way lower than Atari Karts, and no one can say otherwise after seeing this comparison. Alright, time to do a comparison between Atari Karts and Mario Kart 64. Before I compare the games, I just wanted to make something clear. I am only comparing the graphics of the levels and of the racers in 3 key areas: background graphics, graphics of the racetracks themselves, and the graphics of the racers, and you will be surprised by how some of Atari Kart's graphics hold up against Mario Kart 64. Alright, the first comparison I am doing is the background graphics. Okay, as you can see, Atari Karts has some amazing background graphics, and while yes, so does Mario Kart 64, but I have to say, in a lot of the levels, Atari Karts might have the better backgrounds, which is a major surprise, to say the least. Next, I'm going to be comparing the graphics of certain tracks in both games. Okay, Atari Karts and Mario Kart have a level which is basically a farm, so comparing them is pretty easy. Both tracks are basically dirt roads, but the first thing I will point out is Atari Karts track has some really nice textures on the road, while Mario Kart 64, frankly, has really no texture at all. Also, the background, grassy hills in Mario Kart 64 look okay, but not very good, while the grass animations in Atari Karts actually looks pretty nice. Alright, in a minute, I'm going to show for 30 seconds side-by-side comparisons of similar levels in both games, so you can see the graphical comparisons of both games. Then I will come back, but I just wanted to first talk about the character models in both games. First, the kart racers in Atari Karts are sprite-based, while the kart racers in Mario Kart 64 are polygonal-based, so keep that in mind. I have to say, looking at the character models in both games, that the graphics are shockingly close in overall graphical detail. Mario Kart 64's characters do have more frames of animation, but honestly, it's not a big difference in graphics. Alright, I would say after comparing both Atari Karts and Mario Kart 64, that the backgrounds in a lot of the levels might be better in Atari Karts, and a lot of the textures on tracks in Atari Karts courses might actually be a bit better than Mario Kart 64. The kart racers themselves is a close call because the graphics are very close, but Mario Kart 64's kart racers might have more frames of animation, so I do say victory here goes to Mario Kart 64. Now, overall, obviously Mario Kart 64 is the better game, and it's got some nice 3D presentations in its tracks, and it has a lot of special effects and animation going on that Atari Karts is lacking, but it is surprising how Atari Karts in certain areas can look better or be very close to Mario Kart 64 in overall graphics. Alright, now I'm going to talk about some of the negative issues of the game. The first negative area is the music and sound effects, and this area is actually more of a hit and miss than bad. The music on some levels is pretty good. While some of the other music chosen is a bit out of place for this kind of game, the biggest issue is this depressing music after you finish each race. Why is this music here? It's supposed to be exciting music because you just finished a race, not something depressing like this. But this music is also used when you have to repeat a track, and in that case, that music is right on the money. The sound effects are okay, but not spectacular. The engine sounds from the karts are fine, but it would have been nice if each kart had a little bit of a different sound effect for its engine. When you collide with something, the sound effects are pretty weak, but I like the sound effects when you skid. The next area I'm going to cover is the game's controls and collision detection. Atari Karts actually has very good controls, especially when considering you're using a D-pad instead of a joystick. The controls are very responsive and work well. The big issue is, unless you have the Pro Controller, which has L and R shoulder buttons, you can't do sharp turns unless you use the 4 and 6 buttons on the keypad. While it is possible to make it work, but it's definitely not ideal, and you can't change the keypad's controller layout to try and make it easier, which should have been an option. Okay, A is your acceleration, B is your brake, and C lets you use an item. But everyone agrees the controls should be reversed. But when I got my copy of Atari Karts, the controls were reversed. C is acceleration, B is brake, and A is the special item, and this is how the controls should have been since day one. I'm now going to talk about collision detection issues in the game. When you hit an object, you can get stuck even if you're clear of the object. This has to do with some bugs in the collision detection, and it can be tricky to get out of it. The other issue is, if you hit certain objects, you can get bounced all over the place, and if you hit another racer, you can get bounced backwards, or off to the side, or get accelerated forward, which can help, or cause you to crash. This collision detection issue can be a problem, but it's not a game breaker by any means. Alright, the next issue I have, which I did mention earlier, is the CPUs get way too hard in the final 2 cups in the Jaguar Ace difficulty, and based on what I've seen, those 2 final cups might be unbeatable, and that's the problem. Games are supposed to be winnable, and because you only have so many lives, you can't even keep retrying until you win. I have no problem with challenging games, but if you can't beat them, then it's no fun. The other area of gameplay with issues is the fact that there is no interesting power-ups, like in Mario Kart, which would have made this game much more exciting. Also, I almost forgot, when you beat one of the 4 difficulties, you get a very unexciting celebration screen, which is less than satisfying. Oh, one last thing I almost forgot to talk about. I do like the characters in Atari Karts. Each character has cool designs, and while some of the names could have used some more work, but while characters like Pumpkin and Firebug are interesting characters, but the rest of the characters, with the exception of Bentley Bear, are, well, basically strangers. Bentley Bear is the only character from the Atari universe, and while I'm no expert on Atari franchises, Atari should have taken some of their classic characters and put them in Atari Karts. Okay, despite Atari Karts' problems, in the end, I am giving Atari Karts an A+, and before you think I'm nuts, hear me out. Yes, Atari Karts has some issues, and it is far from perfect, but the reason why these problems are here is the game is simply not finished. If the Miracle team who were making this game would have been given a few more weeks or months, Atari Karts would have likely become a AAA title, and I can see how good this game could be, and I wish either an enhanced port or sequel would come out for this game. I am also giving Atari Karts this score because the game's graphics are very good and really show us what the Jaguar can do, and the fact that the game is running at 60 frames per second with such good graphics, and the fact that Atari Karts also offers a multiplayer option, I think Atari Karts is a pretty good game and I really like it, and I find the games very fun. I do recommend you pick up Atari Karts, but unfortunately Atari Karts is considered the rarest commercially released Jaguar game, and a boxed copy of the game, which is what I have, can cost over $100, and it really sucks because this is a good game, and the only reason anyone can think of why this game is so rare, and this answer is pretty much agreed by everyone in the Jaguar community, is Atari Karts must have had a limited print run, and I don't understand why, considering this is a good game. Atari, what were you thinking? If you can find Atari Karts for cheap, then my advice, pick it up, because this game has the habit of being there 1 minute, then gone the next. Or if you really want to play it and want to pick up a copy right away, then be prepared to fork over some cash for a copy. Atari Karts is a really good game and one I highly recommend. This concludes my review of Atari Karts. Please tune in next time when I cover more Atari Jaguar titles. I will see you guys later. This is the Entertainment Wizard, signing off.